Well, hello, Spice Heads. Welcome back to another great expert roundtable that we've got today. Should be a really good one. Today we're going to be talking all about getting your users to stop downloading ransomware and what to do if it actually happens. We've got a great panel of experts. It's pretty diverse. We've got representatives from all up and down the security stack. So this is going to be a really fun event. We've got a lot of experts that I think you guys are really going to get enjoyment out of. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start things off with a round of introductions so you guys can meet our panel of experts. We'll start first, representing Sophos, Mr. Greg Bennett. Greg, how's it going today?
It's going fabulous. We're having a great day today. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Greg, can you tell us a little about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. I'm a sales engineer for Sophos. I'm out of the Pacific Northwest, so I'm sitting here on a rainy day in Seattle, which isn't too unexpected. But I handle the territory. I run around, shake hands, kiss babies, work with customers and partners alike.
All right, very cool. Thanks so much for joining us today, Greg. Looking forward to hearing from you. Our next panelist is representing FishMe. Everyone please welcome Aaron. Aaron, how's it going today? Aaron
Hi,
Higby.
it's going great. Thanks for having me.
Aaron, can you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. I'm the co-founder and chief technical officer of FishMe. So my day-to-day involves running our research team, which is watching all the ransomware actors, as well as our engineering teams.
All right, wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us today. Aaron, where are you guys based out of?
We're here in Leesburg, Virginia.
Leesburg, Virginia. Very cool. Thanks for joining. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. Our next panelist is representing KnowBe4, always a favorite to have on these panels, Mr. Stu Showerman. Stu, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Stu, can you tell us about yourself and what you do for KnowBe4?
I'm the founder and CEO, and before that, I ran essentially an IT security company that did endpoint protection.
All right, very cool. And Stu, where are you guys based out of?
We are in Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay in May is still leather jacket weather, or you just like to cool?
Inside it is, outside no.
All right, very cool. Thanks for joining us as well, Stu. Next, representing WebRoot, we have Tyler Moffitt. Tyler, how's it going today?
Pretty good, pretty good. I appreciate you having me on here. So I'm a senior threat research analyst with WebRoot. I've been with them for about 7 years now, and I actually work directly with malware in the database, and also publishing blogs and doing conferences and stuff like this. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. And Tyler, where are you guys based out of?
We're in Broomfield, Colorado, so like 15, 20 minutes or so from Denver.
You guys still have snow there, or is it mostly melted?
Raining is what it was yesterday, but we did have snow in late April and in early May. So hopefully we're done with it and we can start our 3-month summer and then go back to snow.
Well, then maybe Stu can lend you his leather jacket once it turns cold again for you guys. Cool.
Sounds good.
And then last but not least, from Unitrends is Joe Noonan. Joe, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks for having me. I'm definitely feeling a little out of place with all these security experts being the backup guy. So I'm hoping I learned something out of this.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks. And Joe, can you tell us about yourself and what you do for Unitrends?
So I've been with the company almost 7 years next month, focusing more on our product management, product strategy, and a little bit on the marketing side as well. But probably spent some time with a number of the Spice Heads joining. We spend a lot of time with the community out there and interact, so looking forward to it.
All right, very cool. And Joe, where are you guys based out of?
So we're based out of Burlington, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, not too far from there.
Just outside of Boston. Wonderful. We're just spanning the globe. We've got East Coast, West Coast, Southeast. Great. Well, before we go any further, I wanted to point some stuff out. We are a couple things. Make sure to pop open that chat widget. Pops open by default, but let us know how we're doing. I think there's a lot of folks in the chat already. Always a great crowd. Always really active. So make sure to pop that guy open and say hi to everybody. And also, most importantly, make sure to check out the resource widget where all of our panelists today have provided some great resources for you guys today. We also have the Q&A widget, which is the most important one. So if you guys have a question for our panelists, we'll be taking as many questions as we can get to. So make sure to get those questions into Q&A. If you put it in chat, it could easily be lost. So make sure to get that question into the Q&A widget. And last but not least, as a special thank you for hanging out with us today, one of you guys is going to be going home with an Xbox One S, sorry, Xbone S, Xbones. I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but thanks, guys. And we will let you guys know who the winner of that prize is at the end of the show. And we'll also be taking your questions later on. So let's go ahead and get started into it. We've got folks representing kind of the antivirus, anti-malware community. We've got backup representatives, and we also have user training. So we'll go ahead and start with the antivirus guys. So let's see here. Let's go with Greg first. Greg, I mean, I think it goes without saying that ransomware is constantly evolving. And it's your guys' job to make sure that your customers are staying ahead of the curve, and you guys are the ones to help them get there. How much of a challenge is it for you guys to keep up with how fast the ransomware evolves, and what are some of the ways that you guys try to stay ahead?
Yeah, ransomware does definitely evolve very, very quickly. It's very much a cat and mouse game. There are constant evolutions of different features. There's different techniques that are being used. The polymorphic approach, and in today's world, not only do you need to be, you don't have to just be a cyber criminal expert. You can be just some kid who's got a little bit of curiosity running around on tour with exploit kits and things of that nature that can really help you build quite a nice sophisticated attack. So in today's world, with the evolution of the threats, of the messaging, of everything that's being leveraged, it's very much round robin. It's kind of like I always like to equate it to speed traps. The cops have their radar detectors or their radar guns, and the speeders always come out with the next radar detector, and it's a constant evolution. What we do is we do have Sophos Labs, which is a global organization internally here within Sophos, where we're constantly looking at new things and new techniques, and not just the strains that are out there, but more what are they doing and how is it interacting within the system on multiple layers, so that we can really better identify and understand what's happening on the cyber criminal side of the fence. Okay.
Tyler, what's your guys' take on it? How do you guys keep up to speed?
Well,
how much
yeah,
of a challenge?
since they are prolifically changing what they're doing so quickly and so often now, sort of reiterates, especially with the phishing campaigns that they deploy ransomware with, we're noticing a sharp decrease in the live time for these phishing sites before they go dark and they're never ever seen again. In fact, the average is less than 15 hours, and over 85% of all phishing sites we observed with 40 million sensors was under 24 hours. 85% were under 24 hours. We have some that last even 15 minutes because they're engineered to only gather a specific number of people. So infect a number of people and then they just go offline versus being online for a certain amount of time. And so it makes it really difficult if you've got static blacklists that are your IP and URL reputation. So, we have a machine learning approach as one of our URL and IP reputation layers. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Bright Cloud. But we take that approach because in many cases, it's able to react in milliseconds or in a few minutes to block these sites, or in some cases even predict them with the advanced, contextual analysis engine we have and the constant feedback loop of data we have. But you have to take different approaches. You really can't run a reactive solution because it's not quick enough. You have to be proactive when it comes to, phishing proactive protection.
Next, I want to talk to the training guys. So, Stu, we'll start with you. How about for you guys? Do you guys, how often do you guys have to update your training based on new attack vectors, new ways that people are being fooled by ransomware pirates. What is that experience like for you guys?
You don't necessarily have to update the training all that much. Yes, you do need to do frequent updates. Generally speaking, email is the #1 attack vector, and clicking on links and opening up infected attachments are the two major reasons why you would be confronted with a ransomware infection. There are some other ways. There are drive-by downloads, which also, if you click on a poisoned ad on a website, could also get your machine infected. But those three usually cover it. If you give your employees frequent simulated phishing attacks, that's another layer that you have to have in place, apart from state-of-the-art endpoint protection and weapon-grade backups.
Which we will talk more about with Joe. But Aaron, I wanted to get your thoughts. Stu had mentioned email still being like the primary attack vector. Is that what you guys are seeing as well? And is there anything else? Is there anything else that maybe coming up as far as what's behind email as far as other phishing attack vectors? Is it chat, text messages? What are some of the other vectors?
I've seen, Facebook messages. I don't know if you guys have seen this. So it comes to you a Facebook message from one of your friends who had their account hacked, and it's an SVG image. All it says is .svg, which is saving vector image. It's a new type of image. It doesn't matter. It allows dynamic content, because it's XML based. And so when you click on it, you're then presented to a website that looks like YouTube, and it wants to play this video. Now, this video, it says it won't play unless you install an extension. Now, all of us who frequent YouTube know that, hey, look, you don't have to install an extension to watch YouTube. However, there are many of our friends who are not so smart and would fall for this easily, right? And they would add that extension. And it only takes one person. I have like 200 friends or so only like 0.5% have to fall for it. And if they click install on that extension, it takes advantage of the fact that you're logged into Facebook and will then message that same message to everyone else, all of your friends, silently, so you don't even know about it. And then if they click on it or if somebody else clicks on it, then it sort of spreads from there like a worm.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a bit of a humble brag there. You're just like, I got 200 Facebook friends. No, I'm just kidding, man. Aaron, what about you guys? What do you guys see as kind of the next vector for phishing?
Yeah, we've been watching ransomware for a couple of years now, and absolutely the primary vector is phishing emails. And it's kind of a doomy and gloomy subject, but one silver lining that I can cast on this conversation is we've actually seen a decline in ransomware campaigns. There's fewer of them right now, and they're remaining relatively flat. The period that we're watching the crimeware authors in right now, they're in a bit of a retooling phase. They had a lot of success over the past couple years sending in documents with macros to enable malware to do infections or to get people to click on executables within zip files. But most of the security vendors have caught up to that, and they're pretty effective at blocking it these days. So what ransomware actors are doing right now is they're watching these latest bugs that just came out. The one that FireEye announced in their PostScript zero-day vulnerability, as well as the one in some of Microsoft's own anti-malware protections. And when they see this, they're going to adapt it into the next wave of ransomware attacks. So as defenders, this is kind of a nice time for us to get our strategy ready.
Cool. And finally, we'll talk backup. So Joe, let's go to you next. What do you feel? So I mean, backup we get, right? Because it's kind of the last line of defense when it comes to ransomware. Obviously, the easiest way to get past a ransomware attack and not have to pay the ransom. But how should folks be approaching their backup strategy specific to ransomware instead of just a generalized backup strategy?
It's a great question. To be honest, it's one of the questions I think people should start thinking of when they're evaluating a backup strategy or a vendor, right? This is kind of one of those key things that the conversation's getting to be board level on a lot of these security concerns, and where backup plays a role. This is a decision criteria. So I think a couple of ways you can look at this are just there are some basic best practices, and I think most people understand and are learning now that a backup is not always something that's going to work for recovery, right? So there are ways to mitigate that risk. One is obviously make sure you have a good backup that you can recover quickly, because you don't want to be down very long. But ensure that you have a secondary copy of that backup that's offline, can't get hit. That's really important. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can impact that initial backup, not just ransomware. So you want to make sure that you have that secondary copy. Another piece I would say is securing the backup system and the architecture around that is becoming more important. There are the old way of setting up backup in a lot of cases is to have a Windows system and maybe a media server and then a proxy doing the data movement. And then you might have other components to this entire architecture, like a separate machine to handle optimization for replication across sites, another machine to handle reporting and analytics, another machine to handle search. You can see how this gets pretty complex when you start adding in cool functionality. If you can simplify that, that's going to make things, I think, a lot easier for people. And even if you do need to have something that's really scale out or role-based and where you have a lot of servers and they're Windows-based, take the time to lock those down to where they're only able to perform that function. You can't treat these like any other normal server. They're housing a lot of data. They're doing a lot of important things with that data. So to the extent that you can, look for ways to really lock that down and find ways to simplify that for yourself.
All right, cool. Well, the questions are already pouring in, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with those. Joe, we'll start with you first. This one comes from Joe B13. How aggressively are you guys seeing ransomware specifically targeting backup files and repositories? And can you give any recommendations to protect against this?
That's a great question. So if you look at a lot of the backup community and you look at all of our forums in our communities, right, all this stuff is public. Nobody's hiding it, when there happens to be an attack or someone gets hit and backups go bad from it. They'd like to, but it's hard to do that these days. What we're seeing in a lot of cases is that ransomware coming in on the server really does in some ways go after that backup. It's an important part of the defense. It's going to help obviously gain more revenue for the attacker to make sure that what's going to defend them is not going to work properly, right? To continue to add that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. In our world, we tend to see less of it because when I talked about simplicity, trying to really lock systems down just to what you do best, which is backup, and ultimately having an architecture that's simpler, using a lockdown Linux appliance. Those types of recommendations, I think, help people a lot to ensure that your backups are secure. But to be honest, I mean, no matter what, you got to make sure that you're testing these things. You can feel as secure as possible, but you should never really take it for granted. And I think there are a lot of products, in not just Unitrends, but a lot of people out there talking about backup verification and automated testing. It's a real benefit. I know a lot of people still don't always use it. So I just urge folks to kind of take advantage of some of those features and look for those and take advantage of how they can help, which is knowing they have a good backup.
Mm-hmm. Greg, do you have anything to add to that? Are you guys seeing targeted attacks towards backup specifically, or is it still just kind of like whatever files they can lock?
It really depends on the strain. They're architected and created many different ways. Some are developed and created to target specific file types. Some are going after the machine in a whole and just whitelisting specific files so that they can deliver the ransom message. So it really depends on the creativity of the writer and the coder, to be perfectly honest.
Generically speaking, though, when it comes from like Locky and Cerber and some of the really big ones that are coming out, they just generically will have the file scope be as large and as big as the spectrum as they can. Ever since Tesla Crypt a couple of years ago, they really did increase the scope of file sizes to where they went after, yes, even the extensions of your backups like Carbonite, or even compressed files, even game stuff like your game mods, your game saves, your DayZ profile. Like they go after all of it if they can.
Great. Let's go to the next question. This one. Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say on that note, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, well, I have encrypted files. I encrypt my disk so I'm safe. And that's just not the case. There's a lot of ransomware that's actually, it's going after benignly encrypted files. In fact, there's even Philadelphia that was targeting specifically previously ransomware encrypted files. So now you've got two criminals to pay, right? You got to pay the first layer so that you can get to the second, so that you can then pay again, right? It's really creative. You got to give it to the creativity of some of these folks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's go to the next question. We'll start with Stu, but I'd like to get Aaron's take as well. Stu, we're wondering if you can comment about the challenges around CFO and CEO spear phishing. I mean, in today's day and age, when it's so easy to go on LinkedIn or companies' websites to look up the name of officers within the company, what can organizations be doing better to kind of help prevent fraud from CEOs and other officers like that?
Yeah, in the industry, we tend to call this CEO fraud. The FBI calls it business email compromise, BEC. It's the same thing. The C-level, your HR and your accounting people definitely have a target on their back. And those are the people that need what we call high risk awareness training that allows them to truly understand what the problems are and make sure that you don't only need your endpoint protection, you need this defense in depth all in place. And the outside layer of defense in depth is this mushy, messy layer of humans with security policy, and then you have, out of that policy comes security procedure, and obviously combine that with awareness. So what you're looking at is that CEO fraud needs to be nipped in the bud with training and following procedure. And if you don't have that, the FBI just reported that the total potential damage was 5.3 billion up to now, and that 1 in 4 organizations actually transfer money out, which is horrendous.
Aaron, anything to add to that? What do you guys? How do you guys recommend handling CEO and CFO fraud?
Sure. Yeah, there's 3 things to keep in mind. One is probably make sure your financial procedures are in order as far as approvals for wiring money and that sort of thing. And that seems obvious on the face of it, and a lot of people might comment, well, my finance team isn't dumb enough to fall for that. But both Facebook and Google recently combined losing $100 million to CEO fraud, business email compromise type of scams. The number 2 thing that you need to do absolutely is to make sure that these people are aware of the threat, and we advocate using software to do simulated phishing emails so that they're aware of it. And the number 3 thing is empower those people to report it and have a response to look at their reports. So you're going to know that some campaign is afoot because they'll likely target more than one individual in any of those respective groups. So anyone who can touch the executives' emails, including their admins, need to have the ability to rapidly report any suspicious email, and you have to have a refined process in place to make sure you look at their suspicious email reports promptly.
Very cool. Let's get another question. This one will be for Joe. This is from the real Double D, allegedly. Is 321 still enough, or in the age of ransomware, is 3210 the new mantra for backup?
Great question. So is it still enough? I think in the end, everybody's got to reduce downtime. And the more that you are forced to attack, the more that you're forced to actually go and recover from your 2-in-1 backups, the ones that are off-site and ones that are elsewhere, the longer that downtime is going to be. So, I don't think it's actually, I think in the end you want your primary backup, the one that's going to get you up and running the fastest, to be as functional as possible. So I think when you say, is it enough? I think it's great to make sure that you have that as your secondary insurance policy. But I don't think it's enough in terms of what you do within backup to try to prevent this issue from hurting you more. So to reduce downtime, I think this is where it gets into just performing regular testing, leveraging automation if you can. Hell, there's obviously forms of ransomware that are going to enable and activate after reboots, right? So even when you do some of that testing, you may think, I have a good backup, I'm going to go recover to it as soon as it boots back up. soon as it boots back up, I'm back to the ransomware scenario. So there's just
And then
more
actually-
advanced techniques and analytics that I think people have to look into to really help reduce the downtime and make sure that good backup is available first, and not you don't have to go to those secondary copies.
I was also going to ask you, if for folks who don't know what that is, could you explain the differences between 321 and 3210? And then can you also highlight what are good zeros, right? What are good examples of a zero backup layer?
You know, it's funny. You're going to catch me in something crazy. I haven't heard of 3210 before.
I think what it means that we're talking about is offline. 321 is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So offline backup, do you guys still recommend tape, or what are some other folks using for like non-internet connected backup?
So we have customers doing a lot of different scenarios here, because obviously that piece where you're taking them offline and doing something a little bit more manual, whether it's tape or whether it's rotating media, those are very good low-cost ways of handling that zero portion of the protection. We're seeing a lot of folks pushing more towards having secondary copies that are more highly available and active and online. And a lot of that is because you want to control the amount of storage you need, the number of copies, and a lot of those a lot of those secondary copies are now at secondary sites being used to spin up very quickly for DR when you might have a bigger outage. So we're seeing folks use that a lot as their offsite method, which really acts for a dual purpose, right? Offsite compliance and fast recovery for DR. So while I think the zero component to that is very good and great for cost-effective nature of things, you know, in the end, people want to be up and running as quickly as possible, and that's going to take longer to recover from. So, you know, this is where I think some of the other recommendations we talked about around securing and locking down that infrastructure around backup, simplifying it, that allows you to leverage more active copies that can be more productive for you, whether it's downtime or whether you're even doing some copy data management types of functions with backup, where you might be spinning them up and using them for patch testing, which could go to some relation to some of the security testing that would be needed when you might discover a new version of ransomware, and you want to make sure that the new update you've done within your product can actually stop that. You can use it for those types of functions as well.
All right, cool. Let's go back to Tyler. Tyler, how quickly this question comes from Eric Smith. Eric, how quickly are you guys seeing the development of ransomware for other operating systems like Mac OS and Linux?
Okay, so yes, we definitely have seen a ransomware for Mac. It's not exactly popular or anything. But Key Ranger came in spoofing the transmission BitTorrent client, where essentially it wanted to presume that it was the BitTorrent client for you to download torrents. It would wait 3 days before it executed, so that way it would make sure that you would not suspect the actual BitTorrent client, and that you downloaded, and maybe some of the torrents you actually downloaded with the client. But it was actually came in as a Mach-OX 64-bit executable file. It called itself an RTF, general.rtf, like a real text file, but it wasn't. That's basically all we've actually seen, though. And as far as more development going around, we could see some. In fact, I think Ransom 32 was a ransomware as a service, and that was developed on a platform that could be executable on all OSs. Maybe we could see in the future some ransomware that's built on a platform that is executable on every operating system. We'll see, but right now it's definitely Windows focused.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Greg, anything to add to that? What are you guys seeing as far as non-Windows ransomware?
No, absolutely. You're going to go where your biggest ROI is. You're going to go with the biggest bang for your buck. And if I can write a single code and attacking 98% of the marketplace, I'm going to, as opposed to writing that same effort and putting that same blood, sweat, and tears into a program. And now I'm only going to reach 5% of the marketplace, or whatever the numbers are. But the large majority is going to be around PCs. It's going to be around the Windows platform systems.
Well, what about then things like iOS? I mean, that's got a large market share as well. Are you guys seeing mobile phones being susceptible to ransomware these days?
We haven't seen a lot on mobile, though, to be perfectly honest. And I'm kind of covering the Sophos logo here a little bit, but in reading the tea leaves, it's not going to take long. I haven't seen a lot of iOS ransomware hitting yet. A lot of that is due to, and phones are still phones, even though they're many computers. Most people don't have the files that they have on their PCs on their phones, right? So it's all around, holding on to that loss. Now, it's holding on to the loss of the files and making it painful to not be able to access those, right?
All right, cool.
Just to
Go ahead. Tyler, you still there? All right, we'll get back to Tyler. Let's go next to, someone was asking, I just lost it. Tyler, you still there? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I apologize. I did hardwire in, hoping that would make a difference. I guess not. Anyway, we have seen some ransomware for mobile, but they're not actual, like, legit ransomware to where they're actually taking the files. Right now, they're just spoofing lock screens where they lock your phone and they ask for Bitcoin. But it's really, they're advertised social engineering to people who don't know what they're looking at, and they think, oh my God, I can't unlock my phone, I better pay it, right? When really you can just go into safe mode, uninstall it, not a big deal. But absolutely right. What was said, that's going to be the future. Absolutely, as we move more and more towards using our phones as our personal computers, the platform is going to move towards there. So we will be seeing it in the future. That's all I had to add.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to the next question. We'll start with Aaron first, and I think this is probably the golden question for you guys. This comes from Trent the Gent. How do you convince your executive team to pay for user education?
That's a good question. And so there's only a couple of different ways they're going to be motivated to do that. One is compliance. There's some compliance-driven reason to do that. And if they're going to do that, they're probably going to go the cheapest way available. And that's why we actually offer some free computer-based training materials. The edge, I'd like to actually challenge the question and say, is awareness really your phishing problem? If you were to poll your users, most of them know what phishing is, just on being on the internet, getting alerts from their banks, from PayPal. We see this as a behavior problem and conditioning the behavior to recognize and report. And I'd like to, again, point out a silver lining to this gloomy and doomy topic. From the perspective of PhishMe and PhishMe research, the themes inside of ransomware emails, they're pretty low level. We don't see anything innovative. They're targeting your users with, you've received a fax, you've received an invoice, you've received a voicemail, and these are the types of things that your users can be easily conditioned to avoid. I kind of like to think of ransomware as a training exercise to help your organizations get prepared for a real targeted phishing attack. And so we want to condition behaviors through phishing simulations to recognize all of the emotional triggers in an email. Fear, reward, curiosity, urgency. So right now, the people that are perpetrating ransomware attacks, they're not really giving it their best effort when it comes to phishing email content.
Steve, what about you guys? How do you guys feel? How do you guys recommend IT pros try to convince management, or what do you feel like are the most powerful ways to do that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different reasons you can present to your execs in the sense of getting budget. Compliance for sure is one. I agree with Aaron. Downtime is another very good reason why you want to do this. The average ransomware infection is a couple of workstations, like 6 and 2 file servers. So downtime for a whole department sitting on their hands is extremely expensive. And when you get to a point where you are regulated, like healthcare with HIPAA, or the financials, which have their own GLBA regulation, a data breach is extremely expensive, and more and more ransomware infections are going to be deemed a data breach, despite the fact that data may not have left the building, but you can't really be sure. And the other thing is that data has been accessed without authorization, and that is one of the definitions of a data breach. So that's not a very good way to help free up budget.
All right, let's go. Let me see. I had another good question and I lost it. I'm sorry about this, guys. This was a question for Joe, and someone was asking, are cloud backups inherently more protected against ransomware than on-site backups?
Yeah, actually, they are. If you're, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Let's start with Joe. Yeah.
So I was going to say, I think there are. So it depends on the definition of cloud backup here. So if you're talking about an online backup just in cloud storage, or something that might be leveraged for disaster recovery, those can be stored in different ways and managed in different ways. But to your point that where you were going, I think that, are they more secure? Of course. I mean, in the end, you're leveraging the same types of benefits that you get from cloud providers around shared infrastructure compliance, security, downtime, high availability, and all the capabilities that go into these types of clouds. I think in the end, that simplifies things for IT, who has a lot of hats to wear on premises and doesn't always have all the skills or all the time or all the tools and the budget to be able to handle these things on-prem. So to an extent that the cloud can provide that added layer of security to these things, I definitely think you do get that to an extent, but it's still a concern, right? And you do need to make sure that backups in multiple areas, if they're going to be hot copies leveraged for disaster recovery, productivity functions like instant labs or something just on premise where you need to collect a file here and there, all of them obviously do need to take into account, the security concern. Okay.
Aaron, were you going to add something?
Yeah, it was just an observation. A lot of small businesses will rely on tools like Box or Dropbox, and most of these kind of cloud sync technologies, they will alert the administrators and they'll stop when they see massive file changes that match their existing ransomware patterns. That wasn't always the case, but all of them have since adopted that.
Okay, cool. Let's go next to.
And you are seeing a lot more vendors in the backup space do that as well with the predictive analytics and being able to discover that within the backup data, because obviously it's really important to prevent it within the production environment, but we care about understanding when it exists in backups because you need to know when that last good recovery point was. So you get that in Box, you get that with some vendors on premise, you get that elsewhere as well. So that's an important thing, I think, where you're seeing folks in the backup space realize that we have a responsibility here. Not just to say, okay, we can recover, but also do a little bit more to help you know when this happens.
Okay, cool. Let's go to Greg next. Greg, we've got a question from Grammar Police. Have you seen any, well, he's asking about fileless ransomware. Is this really a thing, and are you guys seeing any in the wild?
Fileless ransomware, as in not attacking files?
I don't know what he means by that. So.
Yeah, I think I do. There are some out there. It's very similar to the description of the iOS attack, right? Where you would throw up a quick page that it leads you to believe that you have been encrypted without actually doing any file encryption. So it's kind of a way of feeding off of the fears without having to develop the complicated payload of delivering a ransomware attack. Mm-hmm. It's out there. I don't know. And
I also have
another
one that maybe they were talking about as well through PowerLeaks, which is basically using PowerShell and the registry, where essentially you would get, it did require a file. It was not an executable file. Maybe that's what they're referring to, non-executable file ransomware, where it came down in a document with an embedded macro. The macro would then infect your registry, and what it would do is it would take like a base 64 encoded file. If you were to like take that base 64 file as a single long string of data, and then you stored that single long string of data inside the registry entry, along with PowerShell, you were then able to execute that file as if it was a file on disk, but it's not. It's just a string of data in the registry. It's like exploiting PowerShell to use that. And we haven't, that may be what they're talking about.
It could be. I have another one.
Go ahead, Steve.
I have another one. it depends a bit on your definition of the word fileless. In the anti-malware world, that essentially means malicious software that doesn't drop anything on disk.
That's correct, yes.
If you are talking about fileless ransomware, that would be an infection that gets kicked in and never hits disk, so that your normal endpoint protection doesn't see it to begin with, can't get rid of it either. And there are strains that do that. And so, yeah, you could say there is fileless ransomware, meaning that the code itself executes in memory only, and then, of course, grabs all disks and starts encrypting.
Yeah, and that's that. I saw Grammar Police added a follow-up, and he mentioned, yeah, that it doesn't drop the file on your computer, and because it's not an executable, that you can't whitelist the application. So I don't know, Tyler, Greg, or Stu, if you have anything to comment further on that.
Yeah, that's basically what we had seen. We've also saw with some of the malvertising where the click, the drive-by, it would drop a DLL, but it would never technically it would just unload its instructions in memory of the actual browser. So Chrome exe, Internet Explorer, Firefox exe, and those were very difficult. You couldn't take a standard approach of analyzing a file on disk or a hash on disk. You had to go straight from sort of heuristic approach, where you're like, okay, threat injection is a known good process being injected to have malicious code installed into it, and that's where you're able to stop it. But it's very successful ransomware because it's gets past a lot of layers, and if your solution's not good enough, it won't have any protection layers for that.
Except for your human firewall, maybe. I think Justin just went offline.
Oh, okay. It's not just us.
We have the place to our own, guys.
Inmates are running the asylum.
Everybody buy Bitcoin.
It's $1,850 today. It's unbelievable.
I know.
Now, I will say on the idea of the whole fileless and kind of where we're going with exploit techniques and things of that nature. There's a lot of processes that can be utilized within, and I'm thinking more along the lines of like return-oriented processing, where you're bringing basically using the Legos within the system to run your tech, and you were making that allusion to the registry keys and things of that nature. So you really got to keep an eye on the threat vector, not just on the files, but also on the techniques that are being utilized within that construct. How are things reacting? There's a lot that's out there that is 0 day, and so there are ways to protect your systems in a signatureless and fileless type of a society or a realm, if you will.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm back. I trust everyone held down the fort in my absence. Cool. Well, we've got time for a couple more questions. I think this is a really interesting one. And so, Tyler, I'd like to get your thoughts on this first. We've got a question from Zachary. He says that he is currently a help desk position at a local school district. He's basically in his own time gotten a ton of security certifications. And he's wondering, once completed, what type of work should he pursue that will lead him into cybersecurity as a career? Are there college and other certifications that he should pursue in order to get into the industry?
Honestly, me personally, my story and my career path, like probably very different than a lot of people's. I started out at Webroot as just the generic, help desk support for a consumer. Somebody would have a problem, have a virus, or they would call, and I would remote on their computer and move from there. And then from there, I was able to do advanced malware removal, where I specialized in people who were hit with malware, would remove that and make sure our product's working correctly and should catch it. And then from there, progressed into the threat research department, working in a database, running samples, stuff like that. I think I suggest starting out working for the company you want to, and then transferring to that department you're looking for. As far as just trying to straight get a job already doing threat research for that company, yes, that's a possibility, but that's not how I went about it. I would try and work with the company first, maybe do what you're doing now. You already have experience doing help desk work. maybe you could leverage that to a senior position at an antivirus or a security solution company, and then from there transfer into the threat research once they see that you're a valuable asset and have the capabilities and knowledge for it. As far as certifications, from what I know and what I understand, I have looked at certifications. CISSP would be, I think, the biggest and best one to go with, but that does require either years of college in combination with experience in the field, and they sort of just scale that back depending on how many years of education you have versus how many years of experience you have. One, I think in total 6 or 7 before you can apply for it. But I do hear that's like the top end best one to get, CISSP. Anyone else, feel free to chime in. I'm not an expert on certifications here.
Greg, do you have anything to add as far as how to get started in security as a career?
Getting started, help desk is a great way to go. Me personally, I've got I come from a sales background. Had myself a little bit of curiosity, started digging around on the weekends, kind of a thing, and kind of read some books and learned on my way. As far as industry recognized, the CISSP is going to be one of the biggest ones that's going to get you at least in the door, and it's going to allow you the opportunity to have an interview. Now, the certifications they're a great way to get the interview, but they're not the end all be all. It's going to be up to you being able to answer the questions, know the no, and that just takes time behind the keyboard and doing the do. Learning the code, learning what you got to do in order to make things happen, reverse engineering stuff, and if you're able to articulate that and you're able to manage that kind of skill set, you're not going to have a problem.
Either Stu or Aaron, do you guys have career advice?
Sure, absolutely. I think of the CISSP as a resume filter. So a lot of HR departments, as they're screening candidates, will look for that. So certainly, as others have mentioned, you should definitely go ahead and do that. But one of the bit of advice that I heard that I'd like to emphasize is enter any technical profession, whether it's a web app developer, a network administrator, a Windows domain administrator, anything that you can get your foot in the door on the technical route. What you'll be able to find is there are emphases in that job that are information security related. And so once you get your foot in the door in any technical job, start taking on more of the roles that are security administration, network within your own company, and one of these days you'll find that you will have an opportunity to step up and get that word security in your title, and then that'll open a lot more doors for you at other organizations.
Cool. Stu, anything from you?
Yeah, that's good advice. If you want to get started with something, there is your basic Security Plus, your certified ethical hacker courses. If CISSP is a little too high, because that is a book this thick with 10 relatively beefy sections in there, and getting experience is practically a must in this particular area. Is not just book knowledge.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. We have time for a couple more questions. I think this is a good one. This is from Andrew8950. Stu, we'll go back to you. Would it be a good idea to try a ransomware simulator on your executives to get them on board with training programs?
What works really well is to first tell the executives that there is a very high risk of them being attacked to begin with, because they have usually more access to the network than anybody else. And second, try a simulated phishing attack that could be something that the ransomware guys do, like an attached resume, or better, an email so-called from an attorney with a lawsuit attached in the PDF. Those kinds of things are great to see if you can get execs to open up an attachment and then drop them on a page with, this could have been a ransomware attack. It's a good thing it was us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Aaron, anything to add to that? trying to fish your CEOs. I feel like that's a good approach.
Yeah, I don't recommend surprising them. No one in your C-suite or your executive team wants to be embarrassed, and so I would recommend getting support from senior management, showing evidence that there's a lot of organizations doing this. This isn't just some wild idea. Make them understand it's not to belittle or make fun of them. It's to give them real world experience in identifying this, and get support. That's how you have a long lasting phishing program. Phishing tests don't do much other than give you a baseline percentage of click rates. But if you want to use the method to institute behavior change, get support and buy-in from the top.
All right, cool. Let me see. We'll take a couple more questions. I've got one from Jay Baker VT, good friend of the show, and he's asking about, along the same lines, we had an application developer get a phishing email that appeared to be from our CFO. What about targeting of IT staff? Is this perhaps as or more dangerous than kind of general phishing? I don't know. Tyler, we'll start with you.
That's an interesting one to target IT staffs. Initially, my gut feeling would think that they would be a little more scrutinizing or cautious when looking at one of these emails. However, if it's done well and spoofed to come from maybe one of their superiors, you may have that overlook or scrutiny could go out the window. So I want to say just as dangerous. That's what I'm going to say. And feel free anyone else to chime in.
No, absolutely.
Aaron, we'll go
I
to
think
you.
A lot of it has.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Greg.
A lot of it has to do with how your network is segmented. Attackers don't particularly care who they victimize. They just want a foothold in the network. And so it doesn't really matter. We recommend targeting anyone. If you can ping a workstation across the LAN or WAN, then that's a potential entry point into the network. And so just excluding or focusing on one particular business unit doesn't seem like the smartest approach to me.
Greg, were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree. The bad guys don't care. Everyone is a target from the mailroom to the boardroom. It doesn't matter where they get in. The moment they own a workstation, they go lateral, and it doesn't matter. Now, an IT administrator is traditionally a very interesting target for a hacker because of domain admin rights. So in IT, you do have a target on your back.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is if you're targeting specific organizations and you really know what you're after, you're not after just the generic I'll take anything that I can get off the walls. But if you're really after specific targeting rights, I would definitely think that IT staff would be a fabulous target. They have unfortunately the overconfidence that they're not going to be attacked because they are so knowledgeable, and so therefore they're going to be lulled into a false sense of security. And once that does get popped, if they were to get popped on their system, IT staff generally have the keys to the kingdom. And if someone's rooting around and looking for something specific, if they've got the keys to the kingdom, they can do whatever they want, because you got to keep in mind, once someone has your credentials, as far as the systems and the network are concerned, they are you. And you can do they could do whatever they want within that system, lock you out, mess around, do whatever, silent infiltrate, exfiltrate files into a small little nook and cranny for later leakage. There's nothing stopping them at that point.
All right, cool. I think we got time for one last question, and this will go to Joe. Joe, I don't know if you're still. I think you're still on. Doug C was asking about backup systems detecting ransomware. Is this something that is currently that backup companies are currently doing, and how is it done?
Great question. So it's happening more and more. I think you're kind of in the early stages where you probably have a few vendors doing it. And even if the vendor's not really doing it per se, you might be able to get information from those systems to help you out. A lot of backup systems are really using, if they're advanced, then they're getting into some of the machine learning technologies to understand what's actually happening on different systems over time and learning steady state and then detecting anomalies. But if it's not that advanced, some of them are still able to track, basic change rates and growth rates and things like that. And it can help you understand when, files are being overly encrypted and touched when they shouldn't be. Those types of anomalies you might be able to catch doing some of the manual reporting that some backup systems can give you. So, even if you don't have something truly advanced, you might still be okay in terms of getting some insight. But I do think there are some products and vendors that are getting into the analytics side of things a lot more, just because with the amount of data being ingested in backup systems, you're able to do more with it. And ransomware is a big enough issue where people are investing in that sort of functionality right now. So it's there. You got to look around a little bit for sure.
All right, cool. Well, guys, we are starting to run out of time, so I did want to give you guys one last opportunity to share any final thoughts. Joe, we'll actually start with you. What final takeaways do you want the folks that are watching today to go home with?
The last question kind of led into it. The big thing I would say is this is a major problem that obviously folks in the ransomware community are evolving so quickly, right? Everybody's seen that you can go on YouTube and basically catch videos about how you can actually start being a distributor that simply. As they evolve, we all need to obviously evolve in the technology space. And I think as IT pros, folks need to make sure they're continuing to evolve their strategies and using the functionality that's available to them to really take advantage of what they can do to prevent this or mitigate it, right? Because in the end, you want to reduce downtime, you want to reduce data loss. You never want to get touched by it, which is what some of the other folks on the phone here are trying to help you do. So I think just keeping up with your strategies because these guys are obviously evolving quickly is just my biggest piece of advice. I've talked to a lot of customers that have been impacted much more than they should be because they're not taking advantage of all the things that are available to them.
All right, awesome. Let's go to Aaron next. Aaron, what takeaways would you like the audience today to walk home with?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I would say, let's take advantage of the fact that we are in a ransomware lull, that it is sort of flatlined as the different authors are retooling. What we need to watch out for in this next wave or variant of ransomware is where the ransomware will encrypt and then the attackers will assess your ability to pay and then boost the amount of Bitcoins that they're asking. So we're about to diverge into a new era where the attackers are going to up their ransom based on the size of your organization. So I'd encourage everyone on this format today is to really look at the way that their users are reporting suspicious emails and see if you have a good process in place, because that's going to be your early warning signs when you have a new variant of ransomware entering your organization. And you'll be able to get on top of it based on those user reports.
All right. Next, let's go to Greg. Greg, final words of wisdom for the folks today.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, we should definitely be taking our security seriously, which we're taking our privacy seriously. But ultimately, it's a matter of don't panic. Apply the right mix of the technologies and the processes. Utilize your human sensors, for information and feedback coming back from the network. And basically, you're going to create a effort and supply an effort to protect, detect, and remediate against anything that can be thrown at you. Be logical, be sensible, be level-headed, and get executive buy-in.
All right. Stu, we'll go to you next. What words of wisdom can you bestow upon us?
IT best practices, patch your systems religiously, have weapons-grade backups, obviously air-gapped, create a human firewall, and there's a series of things that you can do. Aaron is right, you do need to get an early warning system. Ransomware is only the beginning. The issue is that, look at 10, 15 years ago, there was this thing called spyware, and no antivirus was actually able to do something about it. We're back in the same situation. Over a year or two, the endpoint tools will have some kind of ransomware detection. For the moment, the end user is your last line of defense, and you need to have something in place to make sure that you don't get infected.
All right, let's go to Tyler. What takeaways would you like the audience to walk home with?
I'll just give you guys a couple. Initially, though, disable macros. Holy smokes! Locky infecting like 90,000 people a day with a power rate of only 3%. They had many attack vectors. The biggest one was the macro infection through Microsoft Suite, whether it be Excel, Doc, whatever. Disable them completely. I know a lot of organizations have legitimate uses for macros. I say work around. There's workarounds for that. Use that. Disable them completely. You can do that in the Trust Center, so you don't even have that enable content button. And then you remove maybe 20, 25% of all of Locky or all of Cerber. Beyond that, I also recommend that, like you said, educating your users beyond just the normal silly slideshow where it's pick the obvious easy answer once a year, get the certification you put on your cube. Actually pay to have somebody do a phishing campaign on your employees. Obviously non-malicious, but just to see who's the weakest link, who falls for it, stuff like that. It's good stuff to know. I know some people had problems about getting financing or something like that for it, but it's definitely worth it. And if you're able to do just one, I'm sure you'd be able to prove to them that it's worth it when you show them how many people fall for it.
All right, very cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Great panel today. Got a lot of really positive feedback from the community. Trey says, great panel. We got a comment from the Real Double D, says this is one of the best panels I've seen on any Spiceworks Webby. And Crown Clown says, I love this panel, in all caps. So thanks again, guys. It is the time to announce the winner of our prize. So the winner of today's prize is going to go to Trent Finley, aka Trent the Gent. Congratulations, you are the winner of the X-Bones. So make sure to PM Emily in the community and let her know where you want that shipped. I can give you my address if you are interested in just having it sent straight to my house. But other than that, I want to thank all of our panelists yet again, Aaron, Greg, Stu, Tyler, and Joe. And thanks again, guys. Definitely enjoyed having it. You guys on. Looking forward to the next one that we get to do together. Make sure to also check out all the other upcoming events that we've got coming up by clicking that orange button you see on your lower left-hand corner. It says click here for upcoming shows. You can see all the other stuff that we got planned, just like the stuff that you saw today. But until next time, guys, stay safe, keep it spicy, hug your clouds, hug your servers. We'll see you guys back here next time.
Yeah.